So what I noticed most in terms of design, especially after seeing the play Everybody, was that there was a clear fourth wall, which you didn't see in Everybody, and more emphasis on background props that changed with each scene. So this meant that the play relied more on the props than the differentiation between characters, because the props were used to make it evident to the audience that there had either been a change in time of the play, for example, when the two professors are talking in modern times versus the older setting of the general timeline of the play, or just a change in the setting of the scene. If you were in someone else's house or in the courthouse or at the hanging scene, and it pretty much relied more on physical props rather than costume design. So it just kind of lumped everybody together but differentiated the different times that were taking place in the play. So just to contrast Everybody with Vinegar Tom, in Everybody, all the props were incorporated on the different characters in terms of their costumes. They weren't background props. The background stayed pretty much a stagnant, either black box or just the door setting. But in Vinegar Tom, the characters all have similar outfits, so pretty much the differentiation in storytelling elements aren't based on the costumes in Vinegar Tom. It's more on the background elements, because it really makes it clear to the audience where they are. And I think this pushes the storytelling, because it shows that with the costumes, they're all trapped in a similar mindset. But to differentiate between these characters all in the same costumes, they use background props, because the wealthier man might have nicer background props to show of his wealth, and the poorer people might just have clothes and kind of shambly beds. So I think it just drove home the storytelling to differentiate without using costume elements. So another design element that I noticed in Vinegar Tom was that the band, although I didn't really understand the purpose of the band, just because it kind of came in at odd times and for me didn't really make any sense, they were always on stage and always present. And it kind of became a point where they were so present that we became so used to seeing them that the audience didn't really notice them at some points. Pretty much the only time you would notice them is if there was a change in movement in one of them. And it was an interesting choice to keep them all on stage, because then it was a little less of having to carry things out. So it just made the whole process a lot easier. And it was just sort of, by having the band, it made the entire play a little bit less serious and severe and in your face. It was sort of a little bit of a break in sort of just the severity of this entire subject matter by having the band there. So I think in terms of assisting the storytelling by having the band on stage, I think the band was used, and again, I don't really understand the band, but I think the band was used to pretty much have a break in the heavy subject matter and bring up songs that were prevalent to what was just being talked about in the scene prior. And I think by doing so, it sort of lessened the seriousness of the entire play and made it a little bit more understandable, and sort of the edgy rock tone of the band kind of just drove home this very feminist and tough mindset that was pretty much the entire backbone of the play.